Authority is here. She's also the founder of the Black Star Film Festival. And just recently, about 2 days ago, it was announced that she will take up the position as the chairperson for the Creative Arts and Tourism Subcommittee for the Bawumia 2024 Manifesto Committee. And so, of course, congratulations to her. She joins us here in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good to
Finally,
see you too.
I've been chasing you since what, 2012 or 2019. And
it's been a
2024,
while.
you've made it happen.
Yeah.
Good to have you.
The last time we met, I think we were doing your program at Legon.
Yes,
we were.
I hope you're well.
I'm very well.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you
And
too. And congratulations.
Oh, jinx. I had to take the lead, but thank you. Thank you so much. Congrats to you as well.
Thank you.
I mean, your name popped up just about 2 days ago that you have become the chair, or you will take up a position as chair of the Tourism Committee for the Manifesto for Bawumia. Congrats on that. How are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling all manner of things, but I think most importantly, the opportunity to serve my country is always exciting. So for me, it's just a progression of putting ideas forward and making things happen, which is what I've been focused on. So it's just, for me, a continuation of what I've been doing. A
continuation. I mean, this is a lot more work, and it's tailored more towards the NPP and what they intend to achieve in the next 4 years. So it may be nationalistic, but it's still very partisan. I'm sure the expectations on you are pretty high because people are looking at ways by which you can still develop the sector without necessarily making it too political.
Right.
How are you going to draw the lines?
Which is how I've always operated. I mean, for us to be able to break through as a sector and as a country, we really need to operate outside of a partisan mindset. And so that's always been my strategy. I mean, when you talk about, for me, when I think about an artist, they are not colored. When I think about the value that can come to the sector or the value that can come to Ghana from the sector, it isn't colored. And so when you talk about creating jobs for young people, it isn't colored. All young people need jobs. I mean, recently I was at an event and we were talking about the idea that there are over 1.5 million Ghanaians that are unemployed. And we know that the sector is one of the largest employer, and entries to barriers to entries are low. And so for me, I think about all these things when I think about the sector, and that's what occupies my mind.
So what's going to be your first move? Because I listened to the spokesperson for the Bawumia Campaign Committee, and he said that all positions take place with immediate effect, and so you should start working almost immediately. What is going to be your first move as chairperson?
So my first move will be to listen. Obviously, because I've been working at this for a long time, I have ideas, I have strategies, you know, I would say we, because there's so many people who have a stake in the progress of the, of the sector. So, but most importantly, I think this opportunity gives me an opportunity to step back and have a listen. So something that excited me just between yesterday and today, for instance, I was speaking with Akusia Abdallah, we all know her, and we were talking about, for instance, the connection between the creative space and education. That's a synergy that is really, for me, very crucial. So we're talking about the idea of incorporating things like design thinking and using things like games to educate. And so for me, those are the places that my mind is, and having those kinds of deep dive conversations that open up possibilities that haven't even been tried before. Because for me, that young person in school who starts to learn about design thinking, then you can project and say in 20 years, this person can become a citizen that thinks about the environment in a unique way. So these are some of the thoughts, and we have so many game developers. You know, Ghana is the second largest gaming country in Africa. You'll be shocked. And so there are all these people that are creating games, but they are not getting the spotlight. Perhaps could we connect that to even our educational system? So these are some of the things, but before you run, you need to step back. And so for me, it's about stepping back, listening, having an overview and all of those before beginning to go on the drawing board.
So more geared towards digitalization at the same time.
Kind of, because, you know, the intriguing thing is, as the rest of the world goes, I would say extremely digital, AI and all of that, bear in mind that the rest of the world is also aging. But we have such a young population. So we need to do things that will make that population more efficient. Because if, let's say, I'll give an example. If the US is aging and most of their population are becoming old, they would need young hands to come and work for them, but that young hands has to be versed in global trends, which is how to use technology and all of those things. So we really need to up the skill levels and also the thinking direction of our young people. And for me, those are some of the things that are exciting.
What happens to the older ones in the industry? I mean, if you have to look at areas to help them develop as well, because again, now your portfolio is even wider. It doesn't only cover the film industry.
Right.
There's tourism, the entire creative arts sector as well, and culture. What are you looking at to make things much easier for the older folks in the industry as well?
First of all, giving room for people to have a voice. Like I just mentioned, myself and Akusia having a conversation. And, she's done some research for a long time, sitting on the table that maybe hasn't been looked into. And now, potentially, that's an opportunity that we can step back and say, hey, there's this research. How can we delve into that? I think that one of the biggest things that older people, and myself counted, play is, first of all, a good sense of where we are coming from and creating a frame within which you may call it a holding environment within which things can happen. And so, and that holding environment can be about safety. It can be about mentorship. It can be about growth, because you never really stop growing. If you stop growing or stop learning, then you're on your way to the grave. So I think creating that environment where people feel heard and relevant, and also not just pushing people to the background and making it look like you have passed, your time has passed, but making people feel that, look, it's also about leaving a legacy. It's about changing things. I think that people are really at the space where things need to start happening differently.
I see.
And for me, those are some of the things I would do.
Let's narrow it down to what I may call your first love, the film industry. Right. Of which you're the CEO of the National Film Authority. It's been, what, 5 years?
4. Actually, this is the 4th year, so I would say 3. Because this
so
is
you have now entered your 4th year.
Yeah.
How is it doing? How's the authority doing?
Very well. I mean, I pride myself and my team on, I say that we are only 3 years old in reality, and I don't know any government agency that has started and in 3 years potentially has done the kind of things that we've done. We've done a lot. We launched 2 major campaigns, the Shoot in Ghana campaign and the Cinema Agenda, and I think those campaigns are beginning to bear fruit, but they're all connected to the overarching dream of situating Ghana as a film and content hub and a shooting destination. And I think those are beginning to bear fruit, because ultimately, in my mind, that's the goal of everything. How do we potentially make Ghana a production hub for the rest of Africa? I keep on telling people, if you're producing content, you don't necessarily just need to look at outside, the global market. You can look at the continent market. And for me, areas like children's programming and stuff like that, there's a big gap there. If you look at, even in Ghana, if you go to, recently I was looking at the Ghana Learning TV, and all the characters on there were white. And I thought this is an opportunity for animators in Ghana to create content for young people. When I try to find content for young people on television, it's very difficult. So these are gaps or pockets of opportunities that we can take advantage of. And you realize that the scenario of Ghana is repeated across the continent. And so if we have Ghanaians or Ghana as a production hub almost for the rest of the continent, producing, let's say, children's programming to even cover the rest of the continent, I mean, there will be so much to do that we won't be able to even fill that gap enough.
Which is something that Morocco has taken the lead in, because when it comes to shooting all the major movies, I mean, aside the fact that it's picturesque, and of course they also have the tax rebates, which is something South Africa has also jumped onto. And there was a conversation about that because there was an American film producer who put out, consent. And I remember we tried to reach her, I'm not sure if it was around that time, where she said things were so difficult she had to relocate her production to another African country. And so questions started coming through. what is the plan to ensure that beyond just making Ghana, you know, the hub, the destination for movie shoots, they get tax rebates, and in fact, things are made much easier for them?
I'm happy that you're asking this question, because for us, beyond the policy, we've put in place practical steps. So for instance, when you come to shoot now, there's an organization that will hold your hand, sort of, so create for you your shooting permits and all of those things needed.
This organization was set up by the Film Authority?
No, the Film Authority itself. So when I say organization, I mean the Film Authority. And then also, let's give an example of the recent advert that we all spoke about, the Super Bowl thing.
Yes.
It's about giving permits quickly. It's also, for instance, security, making sure that there's security clearance, making sure that there's protection in the marketplace. So there's so many things that go into this. If someone is coming into town, do they need permits from the police? Do they need to fly a drone from the air? All of these things are things that the National Film Authority has streamlined. But beyond that, when you mentioned the tax incentive, it's something we've also been working on. That's something I was talking about over 9 years ago. So for me, it's top on my agenda. And, I say to people, look, for real, if you look at the data we have, we lost a lot because we don't have tax incentives. So that document, thankfully, is something that even His Excellency is very interested in, and actually mentioned it during the last Africa Cinema Summit last year. And so my office has completed work on it. We are proposing a tax incentive. In fact, our package is even nicer than a lot of other people.
Tell us.
Well, just to give you a little bit of hint, for instance, we are proposing that any company in Ghana that perhaps gives money to the film fund gets some kind of tax considerations or waiver. That's one. We are proposing a kind of exemption on importation, bringing in equipment, both for large-scale infrastructure and shooting is very expensive. So some kind of waivers on import tax. We are looking at VAT incentives. So we have touched on all the major tax reliefs and are proposing those things. And we looked at, obviously, best practices around Africa, but also best practices around the world. And we think that when the Ghanaian film tax incentive comes, it will be really, really good. And it's something that we have finished working on it. In fact, the outgoing minister, my office handed it over to the outgoing minister of my ministry. He made a first presentation already.
What percentage are we looking at? Because in South Africa, for example, I think they were hovering between 20 and 30%.
Yeah.
Same for Morocco. We're told that, in fact, they're even looking at taking it even higher. For us, what percentage are we looking at to make us even more competitive? Right.
I like the word you use, to make us even more competitive. So we are going at it from a very innovative standpoint, looking at our own peculiarities and what also Ghana has done before. So we are proposing a total exemption, which is in itself fascinating and makes everybody sit up, because obviously you keep on mentioning Morocco and South Africa, and you're very right. And so if we're coming in at the back of that, we need to make a big impression. Otherwise, nobody will pay attention. So what we are saying, that if you're bringing your equipment in, there should be a total exemption on importation. And so there's nothing, even globally, there's two systems that is usually practiced. That's the tax rebate, I forget the other one. But we are kind of bringing in the third one, where we are saying all of the other two models, you would have to pay and then present your taxes and then be rebated. But we are saying from the front end or from the back end, don't even pay, because that reduces complications. It reduces all the, for instance, I was having a conversation with Amazon before they left Africa and trying to talk to them to come to Ghana. It was a very good conversation that we had. And they said to me, look, we've done productions in other countries where we are waiting 5 years and our rebates haven't come. And so those also becomes places for concern. So if you can say to the producer, look, when you bring your equipment, you don't even pay. Immediately that becomes savings on you. Because what will make that producer sitting in LA or wherever decide that I want to come and shoot in Ghana? Like the recent example that we had, you need to be able to show them that we have the right skill sets, we have the right equipment landscape, we have the right safety, environment, weather, all of these things, banking system, all of that. All of these helps. And also the cost of our services, how low are these? So we are looking at the issue as down the entire value chain. And let me just add that one of the things that is exciting about the film sector is that it carries along all the creatives. And so makeup artist, designer, writer, architect, you know, all of these people, craftsperson, a clothes maker, you know, so the film industry, music, you know, when you looked at that ad, you heard J. Dublé, Ambule, for instance, in there. So one of the biggest things about films is that it is a vehicle that is able to carry along all of our sisters and brothers, and I think that's a platform we should use.
But are they obliged to? Because if you're giving them 100% tax rebates, like you're saying, for example, then there should be a caveat that says that on condition that you're using, or at least 90% or 80% of your production crew would be locally sourced.
That is the condition.
Remains. That's the condition.
So you can't just come. So we are reducing qualifying spend, and all of these things will come out later. So, but I'm just giving a little bit of insight. But it has to be, I would say, a certain number, a large, more than 50%, almost 60 to 70% Ghanaians. And so if you look at the recent example that we had, you see that it employed over 1,500 Ghanaians.
Which one, the NFL?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
over what?
1,500 Ghanaians, yeah. The way the value of the sector is spread, when people come, they pay staff, all the workers, crew, everybody is paid, like I said. Hotels, local production house does something like this. They would get enough money or be able to save enough money to do their own production. So I would say that it's been maybe intentionality on our part. And as well, you know, when we talked about the production house that went out to bring this ad, you need to also grow yourself to the place where you can pitch internationally and be able to pitch against Morocco and South Africa, say I have the right levels of skills, I have the right, because nobody wants to come into Ghana and bring all their equipment, all their crew, all of those things. So I think that there are some production houses. There's an up. We see within the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen significant improvement and growth. Maybe it has
in the film industry.
In the film industry, yes.
A lot more people are saying there are other.
So, for instance, this year we are focusing on initiating the film funding. That's why I was even saying that one of the contributors to the film fund is corporates, for instance, and it's tied to the tax incentive, so that when you give, you can get a waiver. For instance, in March 20th, we are doing a film investment breakfast so we can talk to corporates. You know, we're having a meeting in my office last week and we're talking to a bank, you know, because we're looking at partnership. And they said to me, you know, we really don't understand this sector. We still see it as intangible.
How?
Even though, exactly. So you see that there's a lot of education that has to happen. So even when you try to bring the conversation of corporate branding and all of those things, the understanding is not there.
What exactly don't they understand? I don't seem to get it when they say that. They don't see it
as a tangible. So
they can make their money back?
So you see, like they would say, if I'm investing in someone who is doing soap, I can go, I can see the soap, I can see the market, I can see it's a tangible. If it's a creative product, how is it tangible? That's their argument. Then I, for instance, said to this individual, it is tangible. I have an IP to my name. For instance, I have an IP to my name. I make money from it. There's a marketplace. When we did the Africa Cinema Summit, for instance, people were so shocked because they saw the marketplace in front of them and they thought, oh my goodness, for the first time in Africa, cinema stakeholders across the continent and globally met in Ghana. That's something, for instance, we haven't even taken the credit for as Ghana doing this. We should take as much credit for as possible. And people saying, look, I didn't know there was a marketplace. I didn't know that, like, the tomato person will have a market, a Medina market. I didn't know that film also has markets. Cinema is a market. Airline is a market. VOD is a market. Television station is a market. Even television can be broken down to free on air and pay TV. So we need to tell our stories better. You see, they say if you don't tell your story, if the lion doesn't tell his story, the hunter will always. So we need to be able to educate. So the job is a lot, because there's a lot of education of even society, and telling society that, look, you can't leave the filmmaker to be, or the creative person to be on their own, because they are telling your story.
Yeah.
They are representing you. And so let's pay attention. They are programming your kids. What kids are seeing on TV is what is programming them.
Yeah.
And we are allowing other countries to program our kids. Can we empower our creative sector so that our culture and the things that we care about can be used to program our kids, rather than leaving it to people and cultures that we don't know?
So then would it be wrong for the industry persons to say that the movie industry is dead?
It cannot be dead if all of these things are happening.
Whose job is it to ensure that this education goes round to the corporate bodies, the investors?
It is all of us, and NFA also is leading that charge. That's why
bringing on board the movie actors.
They are there. They are all there. You see, the thing is, there are some people, you cannot run away from that. When things have gone wrong in a long while, when you're about to fix it, and I'm that kind of person, you need to go into the foundation, and every foundation involves digging into the ground.
Yeah.
And as you know, when a building is going and you surround the building and you are digging, people even think there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
But without going deep and building a foundation, you cannot build upward. And so for the last 3 to 4 years, we've been very involved in going deep, digging into the foundation. For instance, even talking to investors and saying, even the equipment landscape, getting people to invest in the equipment. This has been an ongoing conversation, to the point where we even got some investors or some industry people to say, okay, I haven't invested in equipment before. I'm now going to invest in equipment. What will the producers need? So there's a lot of underground work that has been ongoing, and it has begun to showcase. But sometimes, even when it's showcasing, people are not clear where the dots are.
Yeah.
And there's also some responsibility that goes to industry players. Perhaps you need to go back to school and up your skill. Perhaps you need to go and collaborate with somebody. One of the conversations we had during the Africa Cinema Summit, for instance, was the issue of collaboration.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people think, I want to go it alone. But you don't have the strength to go it alone.
Yeah.
And so when you do it alone, your production quality may not be high enough, which means that you won't have the way to enter into maybe Netflix.
Yeah.
If, for instance, even for Netflix, I'm just giving you an example. Film One is their distributor in English-speaking Africa. If you go and speak to Film One and you want to do your production, Film One will tell you that, okay, add a Nigerian. You know, co-production right there, happening right there. Because if you add a Nigerian, if you're a Ghanaian producer and you add a Nigerian, it will open up the Nigerian market, because they are also a cinema. But at the same time, it will open up the pathway to the platform quicker.
Okay.
Before you can hire a Nigerian, maybe your budget size has to go up.
Yeah.
So maybe you, the producer, your budget is not enough. Maybe you need to go and talk to another producer so you can come together and get more money. Maybe the film fund also needs to happen. So I keep on also saying to government, and I am at the place where I say to both sides, look, this is one of the largest places that we can create employment, jobs.
Yeah.
Invest in the space. We are focused on tourism. One of the ways to increase tourism very fast is through film tourism. Beyond that, is about programming, education, all of those things. So, but that conversation at the end of the day is always about return on investment.
Yeah.
Because just as the business person will look for return on investment, government also looks for return on investment. But government's return on investment is different. It's about what jobs have we created. It's about contribution to the economy, all of those things, which also means that some research has to be done. The 2001 UNESCO report research was very good, and it has helped us a lot. But even then, I've gone back to UNESCO and I've said to UNESCO, can we do an in-country research that tells people that, for instance, the UNESCO report said that the industry is presently contributing $5 billion across the continent and employing 5 million, but the potential is for 20 billion and to employ 20 million. What does that mean for Ghana? What is Ghana's stake in that 20 billion potential and 20 million potential? Can we do local research to get those numbers? And we've been having that conversation, and I'm happy to say that UNESCO is also beginning to look into that space.
Well, you keep mentioning the film fund. So does it mean we've not been able to accrue any funds into it, any money into the film fund?
No, it hasn't been launched. It hasn't been launched.
So
I mean, we did a soft AE. We are still, and also, like I said, it's also in a way tied to the tax incentive. It will help.
That is done.
No. We have registered the account. I mean, I don't have the account in but we've registered it. There are things we need to go through, including our LI, legislative instrument as NFA. We have finished our stakeholder engagement. That also is a policy that is on the ministers, the incoming ministers' desk to push forward. So we are making sure, you know, they say that whatever is it's a meeting of opportunity and preparedness. We are making sure that we are doing all the work we need to do to be ready. Then as soon as the opportunity comes, we push it, and we continue to bring those opportunities closer to us as well.
What about Black Star Film? Because that was the name that you had proposed, that the Ghana movie industry's name be changed to, and you faced a lot of opposition.
It's not the name I proposed. It's the name that Ghanaians voted for.
Ghanaians voted, okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that correction.
Yes.
But then I remember that at that time, Honorable Makoke Kumante, the deputy minister, had asked that we hold on with the change of name for that. So what's the update on that?
We never got, a final response, and it was quite damaging because, you see, that action we took was in collaboration or in consultation with major stakeholders. For instance, DSTV will tell you that they don't know how to categorize Ghanaian films. You know, Netflix will tell you, right now if you go on Netflix, you see that all of Ghanaian films are put under Nollywood. So two things were at the table. There was an official, they needed an official recognized name. We still don't. Even when you look at the unofficial names, they are all floating. They were not something that was intentionally chosen. So they've come to us, or they came to us and they were like, you need to give us a name that you want to be called. And for us, we also thought this is not something we sit in our office and decide that this is the name. And this is not even something that should be left to filmmakers alone, because the film industry or the creative sector belongs to Ghanaians. So let's take this to Ghanaians. And in doing that, you know, we lost the love of Ghanaians somehow as a sector along the way. That was also one of the strategies we adopted to get Ghanaians to fall in love again, or to begin to feel an ownership of the sector. So we said, okay, people should vote. And we came up with a committee, and we all know what happened. But whatever be the case, there needs to be some kind of intentionality behind picking or deciding as an industry. But beyond an industry, let me emphasize, as Ghanaians, what we want to be identified as. And this went through a process, a legitimate process, so maybe the incoming minister will make a decision. Otherwise, whatever it is we need to do as Ghanaians to ultimately get to the point where we have a recognized name as well as a name that we can all buy into. That's my only interest at the table.
The concern was that Black Star Film goes hand in hand sort of with your Black Star Film Festival. So then people thought that you had personalized it and they weren't sure if that was the right thing to do. I wasn't even
part of the committee, so I don't know how I personalized it. And you see, I don't want to go into that conversation much, but I think that if we trivialize Black Star and we push it to one person, it will be unfair to Ghanaians. Black Star, as a whatever you want to term it, is something that Ghanaians own. We are the Black Star of Africa. This was something that was given to us by Marcus Garvey, whenever. And there are many things that can be called Black Star. It doesn't take away from the fact that Ghana itself is known as the Black Star.
Yeah, but for example, if we agree to Black Star Film Industry and now there's a festival and they decide that, okay, let's call it the Black Star Film Festival, Now that competes with your own...
No. So, again, whether I'm there or not, and I'm not, I want to believe that Ghana will live longer than me, and Ghana will live longer than even the festival,
Us, yes.
you know, and the
Of course.
festival. So the festival also has played its role, continue to play its role. Let's not demonize a festival that has contributed a lot to the film industry itself.
All right.
Whether I became the CEO of the National Film Authority or not, and I will not always be the CEO of the National Film Authority, it will live beyond me. I think that we should look at this issue in the sense of what does it mean for Ghana? Is this something we want? Rather than personalizing it. And you know, for me, during that conversation, that whole conversation, there were a few things that jumped out at me, and I was telling my team the last time that perhaps we missed a good opportunity to have a certain conversation. Example, I heard things like, what good can come from black? Things like that were said. And so the conversation, you see, sometimes when things are happening, we get distracted and we don't pay attention to the real thing.
Yeah.
So perhaps, is this an issue of we ourselves not confident in who we are as black people, you know, and all the things that can come. Some of the comments I heard, I was like, wow, wow. This goes deep into the psyche of who we are as a people. And perhaps the whole Black Star thing was a scapegoating away from what the real issues are. So perhaps the confidence that we have in us as a people, what our color is, those are the real issues, and perhaps maybe we can focus on those things. And those things then can link to perhaps even a national agenda of self-motivation, of empowerment, of programming that looks like us, you know, hair that looks like us, clothes that look like us, culture that we have, you know, we feel proud of, patriotism. We can begin to look at all those things, and I think those are deeper conversations that we need to have as a country, and perhaps this gave us an opportunity, a missed opportunity then, but perhaps we can come back and look at those kinds of conversation and have them.
And I was going to come to that, because what stops the NFA from coming back to the same stakeholders who had voted for the Black Star Film Festival to say that, well, we face some roadblocks? Will there be other suggestions for what we should describe our movie industry as? If anybody has a suggestion, even the film industry as well, I'm sure a number of them came up with some names. You could reconsider some of them, won't you?
Well, if people vote, you know, like voting, you can't just go and overturn people's votes.
But it's obvious that there's a standstill with that name that they voted for.
Yes, so I'm saying that, and that's above my pay grade. You know, my boss made a decision, and my boss has to make a decision. So until my boss makes a decision, it's above my pay grade.
Have you reminded him?
Severally.
That there's a lacuna and we need to fill that.
Certainly, I think we do our job in reminding all the time and bringing forward the things that we haven't done and that we need to do. But you see, the things that need to be done are so many that sometimes it's like you are running, and if you jump over something, you know, that you have to keep running. And so there's so many things that we need to do, so many things that needed to be done, that we did not have the time and space to stand and have that argument beyond a certain point. Because also sometimes people come at these things with their own agendas, and we don't have time for that agenda. When I say we don't have time for sometimes those agendas, I mean as a sector, there's so much riding on us to succeed. As a country, there's so much riding on us to succeed. So sometimes it's about, look, we need a film fund, we need tax incentive, we need the shoot in Ghana, we need to talk to studios, we need to up training, we need to get our gamers to get the acknowledgement and spotlight. We need to, you know, there are policies that need to be done, standardization processes, and we are a new organization, we are a young organization with only 16 employees. So sometimes it's about even the capacity, and we are like, you know, let's just keep going, and maybe this is not our battle to fight. Somebody else may come and fight that battle.
Now, what do you make of this? And I know it's maybe a personal issue between Lewin and Martha Nkrumah, for example. but being the CEO of the National Film Authority and understanding that this also has to do with the stakeholders within the industry, how do you view what's going on with the fact that there are some English-speaking actors who don't think that they would want to play any role in Kumawood, and as a result, the Kumawood players are also not too happy with the situation, and that's sort of bringing a divide in a movie industry that's supposed to be united?
You know, sometimes I see all these as symptoms
Of what?
of a bigger problem, because there's some confusion in growth, and because, you know, I always give an example of South Korea. I'm in love with K-dramas. And I think that really one of the way forward for Ghana is doing content that looks like us, feels like us, and sound like us, but with a certain quality. And so I'm somebody who is a big supporter of our local sector, that perhaps South Korea could be a model we study. And to the point that now, when I'm watching a South Korean K-drama and it's in English, I go back and turn it to the local language.
Is it?
Yeah, because I like the sound of it.
Okay.
I'm now beginning to understand a few words. I like their food. And interestingly, their culture is very similar to ours. They behave like us, you know, even the overacting a little bit, all of those things. The difference is quality.
Okay.
I think that as soon as, and again, that quality can be connected to skills training and funding.
Yeah.
So once that problem is solved, like you have the most handsome person, the most educated person partaking in K-drama and doing it well, if the educated person understands that, look, for instance, you can't even go to the Oscars if your film is not in your local language of some sort. But this is done at a good enough quality that they are dressed well, eye candy, you know, everything done well, then, you know, you wouldn't worry about those little things.
Okay.
But now, because there's that gap, we will continue to have these issues. And these issues are not issues in themselves. They are just symptoms of a bigger issue. And for me, I'm all about addressing things from the roots.
Okay.
Once you address it from the roots and the foundation, the rest will be taken care of.
Does this fall within the domain of the NFA to sort of step in and try and figure out how to fix this problem between the two sides, the two divides?
Oh, water will find its level.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. You don't want to get involved in this.
I think that there's always been, even in my time,
Yes,
there were
there
always,
was that
you know,
rift.
but up to now, we've made up some people, you know, I started over 30 years ago. There are people I had fights with. Now we meet and smile together. These things will happen.
So they'll be fine?
They'll be fine.
They'll be fine. Okay.
They'll be fine.
We have to go, but Koko, if you can just indulge me, just two more questions.
Right.
One of them, Socrates Safo had talked about licensing of the movie industry, the stakeholders, so that if you're asking for quality, you can get it because then you are licensed. Someone cannot just get up and call himself a doctor without a license. Same thing we should do for the movie industry as well, so that everyone who plies their trade within the industry, we know that they come with some level of quality and knowledge and experience. What do you say to that?
He was actually talking based on what is captured in the legislative instruments of the NFA, of Ghana, or let's say of the NFA. And those issues came up among stakeholders when we were doing stakeholder consultations. In fact, it's interesting because it's the same stakeholders who sat down and decided this is what we want to do. But then when we went back to them and we cleaned it up and we're like, this is what we are doing, then some people came and said, no, we don't, you know, this will limit creativity. And then some people are also saying, no, this is what we need to do. So those are all some of the conversations that happened during the stakeholder conversations. But I think that that particular condition is actually captured in the legislative.
It already exists.
It already is captured in the LI of the
That is
National
yet
Film
to be.
Authority. So it's just about now moving that LI forward. Again, that's another thing which is on the desk of the incoming new minister.
How long has it been on the desk of the
for a
old
while?
minister?
It's
How long?
been, well, we finished the consultations early last year.
Okay.
Yes.
Early last year.
Yes.
So we're looking at almost a year since that LI has been tabled.
There are
waiting
few
for-
things that are there. For instance, the local content policy is one of the things. There are few things, you know, but you
need to
see,
look at.
under our ministry, there are quite a number of agencies, and everybody is vying for attention. So sometimes it's about lobbying, you go, somebody else who gets attention and all of that. So maybe it's not that or somebody doesn't care, but there's so much to do.
All right.
So we will continue to do our best to make sure that our issues are put at the forefront, and conversations like this help move those things forward.
We have to go, but what's the way forward for the NFA quickly before we wrap up? What are you looking at this year?
The tax incentive is our major focus this year. Film Fund is our major focus, raising money. Of course, we're going to do the Africa Cinema Summit again.
Okay.
We started the Ghana Cinema Week, which is about bringing back the love with Ghanaians. We are working on it. We continue to work on the marketplace. Shooting Ghana is out there. We are continuing to talk to global stakeholders as well as develop the local market to meet up. So there's a lot happening, and those who think that things are not happening perhaps should come out of their shell. And look, I keep on saying, and I want to use this platform to say it, we are all one. Our future is tied. We rise or sink together, and sometimes we need to put aside our grievances with each other. I think we have a unique opportunity in history at this time to come together, decide this is what we want as a sector and this is what we want as a people. And if we miss this opportunity, we might miss it for a long time. So let's grab it.
We hope we don't, but thank you so much for your work. I believe that you still hold yourself as the CEO, or you
Absolutely.
Still, even though you are on the manifesto committee as the chairperson for the tourism.
Absolutely.
I see. All right. Well, we wish you the very best.
Thank you.
And we'll come to you again for some further updates. Hopefully the LI will be passed when Honorable Andrew Ejapa Mensah takes up his position fully as the Minister for Culture, Arts and Tourism. Juliet Asante has been our guest on this special edition. She's Executive Secretary of the CEO of the National Film Authority, and also just recently has been appointed as the chairperson for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's Manifesto Committee in charge of tourism, arts and culture. She's also the Executive Director for Black Star Film Festival. Maybe another time we'll talk about that.
The founding president, not the executive.
Founding president.
Yes.
Thank you for that correction. Thank you, Juliet. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's eat some gobe, shall we? AJ will be joining us shortly. Don't go anywhere.